We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 28a. The Gemara is in the middle of bringing a brisa which discusses the fact that a person is not allowed to bring a carbon using the animal, or in this case, the money separated from his father. The Gemara thinks I might have thought a person could use the money from his father, because we find by Naziris that you're able to use the money that your father separated, bisman shein stumin, if the money wasn't specifically allocated, velo bisman shein mafurashin, not if the money was allocated. In other words, certainly if the father said, this money is for my carbon chatos at the end of the Naziris, and this is for my carbon ola at the end of the Naziris, and this is for my carbon shlomim at the end of my Naziris, so then the son cannot use those funds. But if it's stumin, if it's unallocated, the son is allowed to use those funds, and therefore you might think the same is true in general. If a father separated some money out for his carbon chatos, maybe the son can use the funds for his own carbon chatos. Talmud lomar karbano, again, the brisa says the same limud as before. The pasuk says karbano, his carbon, bekarbano hu yotze, ve'enu yotze, bekarbanav. If he has to be yotze with his carbon, he does not fulfill his obligation with his father's carbon. Yachalo yotze b'mos shifresh afilu min hakala ala kala, min chamura ala chamura. I might think that a person does not fulfill his obligation with the money that was separated by his father, even let's say it was separated for a light avera and he's using it for a light avera, or it was separated for a strict avera and he wants to use it for a strict avera. Avol yotze bekarban shehifresh la'atzmo. But maybe a person can, let's say if he separated a carbon for himself and he separated it min hakala ala chamura, he separated it for a light avera, now he wants to use it for a stricter avera, or min hachamura ala kala, or the other way around, he separated it for a stricter avera, now he wants to use it for a lighter avera, maybe that would be okay. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says karbono. It says again, it says his carbon al chataso, and it says on his sin at sheyehei karbono l'shum chato. It has to be that the carbon is for the particular sin. And the brisa continues, Yochel lo yotze bebehema shehifresh liatzmo min akala lakala. I might think that a person cannot fulfill his obligation with an animal that he separated for himself, from a light avera and a light avera, or min achamura lachamura, or from a strict avera and a strict avera, afilu min hakala lachamura, or min achamura lakala, or even from a light avera and a strict avera, or a strict avera and a light avera. Why is that not good? Shekenim hifresh behema, because if a person were to separate an animal, al hachelev, let's say for a sin of eating chelev, vehevi al adam, and instead he uses the animal, brings it for a sin of eating blood, or adam vehevi ala chelev, or the he separates it for blood and then he brings it for the avera of eating chelev. Shaharei lo ma'al velo keeper. The reason is because there by animals there's no din of me'ila, and therefore there is no kapara. Aval yodze b'mos shehifresh liatzmo min akala lekala. But let's say it was money that he separated for himself for a light avera, he could maybe use it for a light avera. Umin achamura lechamura. Let's say he separated for a strict avera, he can use that money for a carbon for a different strict avera. Or min achamura leka'alo min akal lechamura, even from a strict avera to a light avera, from a light avera to a strict avera. In other words, maybe money is different. If he separated money for one avera, maybe he should be able to use it for a different avera. Why is money different? Shekenim hifresh liatzmo mos min achelev vehevi al adam, because if a person separated money for himself for chelev and then he brings it for the sin of eating blood, or al adam vehevi al chelev, or he does it again, separates it for blood and brings it for chelev, shaharei moal, because by money there's a concept of me'ila, and therefore v'chiper, therefore there should also be a kapara. Talmud lomar, again the pasuk says al chataso, on his sin, ad sheyehei karbano l'shem chato. It has to be that the carbon is for the sake of that particular sin. And Rashi says, Shekenim hifresh behema ala chelev, if a person separates an animal for the sin of chelev, shachal b'shogeg, which he ate b'shogeg, ve'vi al adam shachal b'shogeg, and instead he brings it for blood, which he ate b'shogeg, shaharei lo mal, because by animals there's no me'ila in these cases. Lefishi kedushas haguf, the point of the Gemara is that the animal has what's called kedushas haguf, meaning the animal itself is holy and being brought in the mizbeach. V'evshar lo lahotzia lechulin, let's say a person would misuse that animal, it wouldn't turn into chulin, it wouldn't lose its kedusha. Lafikach lo keeper, and therefore you'll say, just like there's no me'ila, meaning it can't be, you can't take it out lechulin, so too there's no kapara. Uchidamina in Perak Basra, the Krisus, this is what we say in Krisus. They changed the nusach over here to Uchidamina in Perak Kamad the Krisus. This is what we say in the first parak of Krisus. Tekeim de lo motzi ma'ayil kipure nami lo mechaper. The idea is, since you can't have me'ila over here, so also there's no kapara. But when it comes to money, sharei mo'al v'chiper, there is a concept of me'ila, so there should be kapara. kapara. Dekevan delokach ben chatas achar shalohufresh lishma nahavilei kemapiklu lechulin. If a person would take this money and he would use it to buy a chatas, even though it wasn't separated for that particular kind of chatas, that should be similar to trying to misuse it and bring it into and using it for chulin, using it for mundane purposes when really it has kedusha. Umal, and there is a concept of meila. You could take it, you could cause it to turn into chulin. V'kevan demalbo, since there's a concept of meila, amrinan v'chiper dehu carbon malya. So we're also going to say there's going to be a kapara. The carbon will also be effective. Talmud Lomar, again, the Brisa says that the pasuk says v'chiper olav hakohen al chatoso deliolam lo chiper adshe karbono l'shum chato. The carbon has to be for the sake of that sin. Shaval b'shamoa lo kiper shari mal b'mos. Even though you could have meila, but still there's no kapara. Called davar sheyotze l'chulin isbei meila. The point is, anything that can be turned into chulin, the kedusha goes away. There's also a concept of meila. V'hoel the isbei meila keeper. And since there's a concept of meila, there's also this concept of kapara. That is the comparison that the Brisa was attempting to make. And in any case, the Gemara continues, katani mias behema. In the course of this Brisa, it does talk about a behema, an animal, by nazirus. Rashi over here says, katani mias behema sharei ein adam megaleach al behema saviv. The Brisa says that a person cannot shave, meaning to say a person cannot bring the animals of his father for his own nazirus. My time, and what's the reason? Because the animals are considered to be allocated, they're considered to be specified, and that's why they can't be used for the son's carbon. My lav afilu balasmum. And again, the whole point of bringing this isn't this Brisa saying this not only by an animal that is unblemished, but even by an animal that is blemished. Katani mias behema. My lav afilu balasmum. Again, doesn't the Brisa mean even if the animal has a blemish that's considered to be meforeshes? And the Gemara says, lo, no, tamima. The Brisa is talking about tamima. It's talking about an unblemished animal. In those situations, that's considered like it's already designated, allocated, because as we said, you're actually going to bring it on the mizbeach, and it is obvious which animals, which kind of carbon. So the Gemara says, similar to before, aval balas mum mai, but what are you saying? If the animal has a blemish, what are you saying? Kestuma damia, then it's considered not designated, it's considered unallocated. But if that was the case, ma'ir yadakatani mos shehivra shafiv, why does the Brisa speak about money that the father separated that the son is able to use because it's considered unallocated? Listening balas mum, you should have a bigger chiddush, even by a situation where the father had a balas mum, animals that had blemishes, that also is considered unallocated. And to that, the Gemara says the same thing that the Gemara said previously. Hachanami here also. What's the point? What is the purpose of having animals that have a blemish? What is he designating them for? He's designating them for their value. And demei hainumos, value is the same as money. So saying money or saying blemished animals is in fact identical. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Nizrak aleha echad min hadamim. Let's say you have a wife, she takes a vow, she completes the entire term of the Nazirus, and already she starts bringing the karbanos, and one of the offerings, the blood has been sprinkled. At that point in time, eno yachol lahafer. It's no longer possible for the husband to annul her vow at that point in time. Once she started to bring the karbanos, and even if just one of the karbanos, the blood was sprinkled, it's too late for nullification of that vow. Rabbi Akiva says, afilu nishchata ala achas. Even if just one animal was shechted for the carbon, not the sprinkling of the blood, even if they're only at the stage of shchita, in such a situation, achas mikol behemos, even just one of the animals was shechted, eino yachol lahafer. He's not able to annul her vow. And the Mishnah continues, Ba'med devar ma'amurim, when is all this true? B'tiklachas hatahara, we're talking about the shaving of purity, meaning she finished her Nazirus in purity, and she's bringing the concluding karbanos. At that point in time, it's too late for the husband to annul her vow. Aval b'tiklachas hatuma, but let's say she became impure, she became tamei while she was a Nazira, and now, so she's bringing the karbanos she brings in tuma, and we're talking about the shaving of impurity, so at that point in time, Yafer, he still is able to annul the vow. Shahu Yachol, because he can say, I don't want an isha minuvelas, I don't want a downcast wife, meaning to say, I don't want to be married to a woman who's not able to have wine, and so therefore I want to annul the vow, because of course, again, she's going to bring these karbonas. If she brings these karbonas, we're talking about the teglachas atumah, she's going to have to restart her whole Nazirus. She's going to become a Nazir again, and he can say, I don't want that, I don't want an isha minuvelas, so he's still able to annul her vow. Rabbi Meir says, Afbit teglachas hatahara yofer. No, even at the conclusion, let's say we're talking about the shaving of purity, she's bringing the karbanos, even at that point in time, he can annul the vow, shu yachol omer, because he can say, Ifshi b'isha megalachas. I don't want a woman who's going to shave her head, even though she's brought the karbanos, but I don't want her to shave her head, I'd rather annul her vow at this point in time, and the nullification will be effective. And the Gemara says, Masnisin deloka Rabbi Eliezer. Our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Again, our Mishnah says at the beginning of the Mishnah that if she sprinkles the blood of one of the karbanos, so that's the end of her Nazirus, he can no longer nullify her vow. That does not follow Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer, he would hold, Ha'amar tegalachas ma'akeves. Rabbi Eliezer holds that the shaving is ma'akev, meaning if the Nazir has not yet shaved, so they're still prohibited in wine. V'kevan delo gilchan, since she has not shaved, even if she brought the karbanos, asira b'chamra, she's prohibited to have wine. V'kevan the isla nivel, and therefore since she's considered to have nivel, she's considered to be downcast, so to speak. Matzi mefer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, he still would be able to nullify her vow. And the Gemara continues, Uvaha Pligi, and they're arguing about the following, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis.